Hey everybody, and Tony here. I knew this day would come. I knew this was going to be the day I was going to rip, tear, and shred this particular Fairly OddParents episode to shreds. Ever since I first saw this thing desecrate the airwaves of Nickelodeon UK as a 13-year-old boy about to approach the 7th grade and doing a summer study program in Oxford. I'm, of course, talking about the episode that got my blood boiling, that I'm also sure that it got a lot of fans of Fairly OddParents blood boiling, especially when I'm about to say its name. It's A Wishful Life. This thing aired on Nickelodeon on May 10, 2005. It was directed by Sarah Frost. It was written by Jack Thomas, and the storyboard artist was Tom King. Now here's a disclaimer I have with my affiliation with Fairly OddParents. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with this show. While I do enjoy the zaniness, the high energy, and the great voice cast found in this show, which managed to make me feel thoroughly entertained, especially if I'm having a very bad day or if I'm feeling really, really bored. There are some downsides to it, which kind of boils down to how repetitive it could be in its formula. Timmy wishes for something. It goes horribly wrong. He wishes it back, and then he learns something from it. Lather, rinse, and repeat. Regardless of whatever qualms I had with Fairly OddParents, it was a pretty enjoyable show. Sure, it may have its good episodes, its meh episodes, and its bad episodes, but as a whole, it's an okay package. And even though it ran for far too long, ending back in 2017, I could still kind of appreciate what it was. However, I am not going to be sorry when I say that It's a Wishful Life got me irritated, frustrated, made my blood boil, almost made me had an aneurysm, and many unspeakable things that this episode was about to do to me. What's wrong with this episode, you ask? Well, first of all, what about the mere fact that most of the people that Timmy tried to do good deeds to, such as Mr. Bickles, his drama teacher, AJ, one of his best friends, and even his own parents, were all a bunch of ingrates for really, really arbitrary things. The mere fact that Mr. Bickles was bitching about the shade of the backdrop, the mere fact that AJ was such an ungrateful butthead towards Timmy, saying that that was not the model he wanted, and the mere fact that his own parents were just awful in terms of not even thanking him, when in actuality, for some contrived reason that they were supposed to win the ugliest garden contest, was just enough for me to want to scream at each and every one of them. And to make things worse, what about Cosmo? He proved himself to be such a fussy jerk, especially considering all the molds that he spotted in the fish tank. And as soon as Timmy made that wish, we're then treated to Mr. and Mrs. Turner really happy that their daughter won all of these awards, including an Oscar for being Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Screenwriter. Now, usually in any narrative, when a kid wishes he or she were gone, it would be the parents that would have the last say of what they truly thought about their kid before the kid realizes that maybe that type of decision probably hurt them or made such a huge difference to them in a way that he or she never expected. But to have that at the very start just seemed like it was really poor pacing, especially when Jorgen von Strangle acted like such a huge demonic asshole towards Timmy, stating that everyone else's lives such as Vicky's, Francis's, Dr. Bender's, and even Mr. Crocker's lives were much better off without him. Even his friends and his fairy godparents, AJ, Chester, Wanda, and Cosmo, it feels like their life was better off without him. So the fact that Jorgen von Strangle was there to keep adding more and more salt to Timmy's wounds was just horrible, considering that Timmy is a 10-year-old boy. And I know that Timmy Turner may not be my most favorite kid character in the world, but to have this happen to him, let alone be thrown at him, is just so unnecessarily cruel. But then this also presents a huge plot hole when it comes to the other people whose lives were probably made worse without Timmy Turner. What about the likes of Tootie, or even Chip Skylark, Mark Chang, the Crimson Chin? What about those guys? Think of it this way. Without Tootie, she would have been bullied by Vicky on such a constant basis. And lest we forget about how enamored she was at Timmy for whatever reason, I'm pretty sure her life would have been more miserable and even more boring without him. What about Chip Skylark? He would have had someone to easily call as a friend, let alone a kid brother from another mother, rather than just one of his fans. Because the friendship between Chip and Timmy is actually one of my most favorite friendships in all of television animation. So the fact that that was not regarded was just a huge letdown. And lest we forget about Mark Chang. What about him, right? I'm pretty sure that without Timmy, he would have been married to Princess Mandai. And what about the Crimson Chin? Without him, he would not have had Cleft as his sidekick. So there were really, really huge plot holes in Jorgen's whole thing that Timmy Turner believes that the world was better off without him. And probably Timmy could have even asked that. What about the likes of Chip, the Crimson Chin, or Mark? What about the other people that he considered as his friends? How would they feel without him? I'm pretty sure that their lives would have sucked without him. That's right, their lives would have sucked. But the episode did not even bring that up. And this all led to an ending that was very, very frustrating. Even with Timmy thinking that everyone's lives will be going back to normal if he were around, such as his parents not being rich anymore and being reverted back to middle-class life, or Chester not having the perfect teeth he had, or the fairies that he had, especially with the riches that he had, let alone AJ with his hair, or Elmer without his boil, Mr. Crocker with his job as a professor, and even Francis as a kind jock, Vicky as a dental assistant, and Dr. Bender and his son being nice. All of these are just so arbitrary. And the moral that this episode had was just equally frustrating. The fact that Timmy shouldn't do good things because it will get him noticed, but because he has to, or he can, is just absolutely disgusting. And it also made me realize just how truly despicable and ungrateful the people of Dimsdale turned out to be towards Timmy. And even when Timmy ended up being wished back, it felt like I was just left with this disgusting and putrid feeling, all thanks to how arbitrary all of these arguments that Timmy Turner has failed them turned out to be. How asinine all of these happenings turned out to be, and also the neglect of other characters who truly meant well in Timmy, such as Chip or Mark or the Crimson Chin, because these guys not only meant very well in Timmy's life, but also their lives. So overall, it was no wonder why I hated It's a Wishful Life back when I was 13, and why I'm still fuming at this episode now as a 28-year-old man. This particular episode was disturbing. It was mean-spirited. It was a huge Timmy torture porn. And it made the other characters just as unlikable and even despicable and truly inhumane. And the fact that Jorgen von Strangle acted like such a huge douche. Yes, I always knew that he was a douche, but this episode took it up to 11,000. Oh yeah. This episode did so many things wrong. It completely neglected how Timmy's true friends felt. It made the people around Timmy a bunch of ingrates. And lest I forget about that asinine detail about some baseball team that could not win because of him, which also added into how asinine and how needlessly sadistic it was. I would recommend anyone who sees It's a Wishful Life to burn it, to decimate it, decapitate it, mutilate it, do what you want with it. Because this thing could definitely destroy your soul and maybe destroy how you feel about people. This episode was not only bad, but as a parody of It's a Wonderful Life, it did not bring any form of holiday joy. It deserves the biggest lump of coal it can ever get. The size of elephant dung. That's right. It's a Wishful Life is nothing more than a waste of my time at best and toxic waste at worst. I'm glad I put this episode to rest. This thing still bothers me with its mean-spiritedness and its cruelty, and I'm glad I got over it. Tune in for yet another video blog entry where I also take a look at yet another It's a Wonderful Life parody. It's one that I actually liked from a show that I enjoyed. I'm going to take a look at Johnny Bravo's Johnny's Guardian Angel. Stay tuned for that. See you later. And thank God it's over.